The night air hung thick over the quiet suburban gym, the kind of heavy stillness that felt like it was waiting for something to crack open. Fluorescent lights hummed above the nearly empty weight room as a lone figure hovered near the squat rack, fingers trembling slightly as they wrapped around cold steel. Ethan Morales had been coming here for 3 weeks, long enough to know the smell of rubber mats and disinfectant, not long enough to silence the doubt gnawing at him. Tonight, though, something deeper pulled at him, a sense that this moment, insignificant as it seemed, marked the beginning of a story he didn't yet understand. He breathed in slowly, grounding himself as the bar settled on his shoulders. Every mirror in the room reflected a version of him he barely recognized: narrow shoulders, tired eyes, a body shaped more by hesitations than convictions. Yet behind those uncertainties lived a quiet storm, one forged from years of feeling too small, too slow, too overlooked. Ethan had always moved through life as though trying not to disturb it, tiptoeing through classrooms, hallways, and conversations. But lately the walls around him felt tighter, the silence heavier, as if urging him to push back for the first time. The weight wasn't heavy, not compared to what others lifted, but to Ethan it felt like a question he had avoided too long. His knees bent, breath caught, muscles shook. A sharp burn bloomed through his thighs, and for a second he almost stood up too quickly, almost let the discomfort win. But something inside insisted he stay with it. That stillness. That strain. That flicker of resistance against a lifetime of retreating. When he rose again, slow and uneven, he felt a tremor of something unfamiliar, pride so small it barely registered, yet powerful enough to anchor him in place. He set the bar down with a soft clatter that echoed louder than it should have. The gym felt different now, as though the air recognized a shift he hadn't spoken aloud. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at the door, half expecting someone to walk in and witness his fragile triumph. But no one came. No applause. No validation. Just the quiet acknowledgement of a night that would later feel like prophecy. Outside, distant sirens wailed through the darkness, the world unaware that a boy who once hid from challenges had just taken the first step toward something extraordinary. Unbeknownst to Ethan, others had noticed him over the past weeks. Small glimpses, exchanged nods, passing curiosity. The regulars saw the way he lingered before each set, studying technique videos on his phone as though decoding a secret language. They saw how he never quit early, even when fatigue carved shadows under his eyes. Yet no one approached him. Not yet. They sensed the fragility of someone learning to stand on new ground, someone who carried the weight of invisible battles. Ethan wasn't just lifting iron, he was lifting the remnants of every fear that had ever told him to stay small. Tonight, as he moved to the rowing machine, a flicker of motion caught his eye, a poster taped unevenly to the hallway wall. The bold letters read, "Army Recruitment Challenge, 2 weeks away." Though the edges curled, the message struck like a bell rung inside his chest. He had seen similar posters before and always walked past without a second thought. But this time something snagged. Maybe it was the way the soldier in the image stared forward with unwavering resolve. Maybe it was the way Ethan longed to believe a different version of himself was possible. Whatever it was, he couldn't look away. He paused mid-stride, breath slowing as the hum of the gym faded behind him. He imagined what people would say if he even considered such a thing. Ethan, who tripped over his own shoelaces. Ethan, who avoided confrontation like a flame. Ethan, who never raised his voice even when he should have. The idea felt impossible, absurd, maybe even laughable. But impossibility had a strange way of stirring something primal inside him, something he had buried beneath years of self-doubt. For the first time, he wondered not whether he could do it, but what would happen if he tried. Returning to the weight room, Ethan felt a new tension threading through him. Not fear, not hope, something in between. A sense of standing at the lip of an unseen cliff. He finished his workout with quiet determination, the poster's image burned into his thoughts. When he stepped into the cool night outside, the air felt sharper, charged with possibility. Streetlights cast long shadows at his feet, stretching ahead like paths he had never dared walk. A single thought echoed within him, steady and relentless. Every journey begins in a moment no one recognizes until much later. And Ethan Morales was finally ready to take that moment seriously for the first time. Ethan returned to the gym the next morning with a stiffness that clung to every limb, but beneath the soreness pulsed a quiet urgency. The poster from the hallway lived in his mind like an ember refusing to cool. He hadn't spoken about it to anyone, barely admitted it to himself, but something about that challenge unsettled him in a way that felt less like fear and more like awakening. As he pushed open the weighted glass door, the familiar whir of treadmills and clanking iron greeted him, yet the space felt altered, as though he'd crossed an invisible threshold no one else could see. He warmed up slowly, stretching muscles that protested with each motion. Around him, lifters moved with practiced certainty, bodies sculpted by repetition, discipline, years of showing up even when motivation failed. Ethan watched them with a blend of admiration and envy. He saw in them something he desperately wanted, not strength, exactly, but purpose. Structure. A reason to wake up in the morning that wasn't just drifting through another day. For so long, his life had felt pieced together by obligations rather than desires. School assignments. Part-time shifts. Small talk with friends who never truly asked how he was doing. But here, amid the hiss of machines and the scent of chalk, he sensed the outline of a different future taking shape. He moved to the bench press and settled under the bar, inhaling deeply before lowering the weight with deliberate control. Each rep drew a line between who he had been and who he might become. His heartbeat grew louder in his ears, syncing with the rhythm of exertion. With every push upward, he imagined the version of himself who might stand in a room full of recruits without shrinking. Someone who could be relied on, someone capable of grit and courage. The thought both thrilled and frightened him. Across the gym, a group of regulars chatted while loading plates onto a bar. One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Jordan, known for lifting numbers that made others pause mid-rep, glanced at Ethan with a hint of curiosity. Jordan wasn't unkind, just intimidating in the way naturally strong people often were. Yet that morning, Ethan caught him watching not with judgment, but with a muted nod, as though acknowledging effort rather than outcome. Ethan felt heat rise to his cheeks. It wasn't praise, wasn't even conversation, but it chipped away at the quiet belief that he went completely unnoticed. After finishing his set, Ethan headed for the pull-up bar, a station that had humiliated him more times than he cared to admit. His record was 2 reps on a good day, grinding, shaky reps that felt more like fear than progress. Today, though, he gripped the bar with renewed defiance, knuckles whitening around cool metal. He pulled once, twice, and strained for a third. His shoulders faltered, core trembling, breath scraping through clenched teeth. But instead of dropping, he held the position at the midpoint, arms screaming, lungs burning. It lasted only a few seconds, yet it felt like he had claimed territory inside himself that no one could take back. When he finally released, boots hitting the rubber mat with a soft thud, he exhaled a shaky laugh. It wasn't triumph exactly, it was recognition. Later, in the locker room, he sat on the wooden bench, scrolling aimlessly through his phone. Social media feeds blurred together, smiling faces, curated accomplishments, filtered success stories. None of it felt real, none of it felt attainable. But the recruitment challenge poster had shown a different kind of image, raw, grounded in struggle rather than polish. He opened the browser and searched for information. The event wasn't a formal enlistment test, but a simulated physical challenge designed to mimic aspects of basic training. Open to anyone 18 or older. No prerequisites other than willingness. Willingness. Ethan repeated the word like a quiet mantra. As he read through the list of tasks, long-distance running, push-up tests, obstacle courses, his stomach tightened. He couldn't meet those standards. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Still, something inside him refused to step back. The impossibility of it all didn't deter him, it ignited him. For the first time, he saw a mountain worth climbing not because it promised glory, but because he had spent too many years living at the base of every challenge, afraid to attempt the ascent. On his way out, he passed the same crooked poster taped to the hallway wall. Morning light from the entrance windows shone directly onto its surface, giving the soldier's silhouette an almost ethereal glow. Ethan stopped again, staring longer this time. The tagline beneath the image read, "Prove something to yourself." He brushed his fingers lightly across the paper, surprised by how steady his hand felt. For a moment, he imagined ripping it down and carrying it with him, a talisman, a reminder. Instead, he stepped back and let it remain exactly where it was, as though removing it would break a spell not fully formed. He spent the rest of the day in a fog of contemplation. At work, he caught himself glancing at the clock every few minutes, eager to return to training. At dinner, his mother asked whether he was feeling all right. He nodded, unable to articulate the restless momentum stirring inside him. Even lying in bed that night, sleep eluded him. His mind replayed scenes from the gym, the nod from Jordan, the trembling hold on the pull-up bar, the bold words on that poster. Strange how a single message, likely ignored by dozens of others, could root itself so deeply in him. When dawn finally crept through his bedroom window, Ethan rose before his alarm, tying his shoes with a firmness that surprised him. The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of dew and distant traffic. He jogged slowly through quiet streets, each footfall a promise he wasn't ready to speak aloud. His lungs protested, legs heavy, but he pushed forward, willing himself into discomfort. Rounding the last corner, chest heaving, he realized something simple yet profound. Nobody knew he was training for something. Nobody expected him to succeed. Nobody even knew he had begun. And in that anonymity lived a freedom he'd never experienced. The world wasn't watching. He could fail privately, learn quietly, rise slowly. But somewhere deep inside, he sensed that this quiet beginning, this unremarkable jog through sleeping streets, was the first chapter of a transformation no one would see coming. Not even him. The days that followed unfolded in a rhythm Ethan had never known before, one stitched together by purpose rather than obligation. Each morning began with a run, sometimes slow, sometimes grueling, but always deliberate. He tracked his distance with an old wristwatch that had once gathered dust in a drawer, its ticking now marking a promise he made only to himself. With every mile, he learned to embrace the burn, the breathlessness, the moments when his mind insisted he stop. In those moments, he discovered a simple truth. Persistence wasn't born from confidence, but from choosing to keep moving when no one could see you. By the end of the second week, his routine had sharpened into something resembling discipline. He pushed through hill sprints even when his legs trembled. He practiced push-ups in the living room while his mother watched television, trying not to notice her raised eyebrows at his sudden intensity. At the gym, he added weight to the bar, small increments, nothing flashy, but enough to make his muscles protest. He wasn't strong yet, not compared to the regulars, but he no longer felt like an intruder in the space. He was becoming someone who showed up. Yet beneath this steady growth, a different tension simmered, a moral one, subtle yet insistent. The recruitment challenge wasn't merely a test of fitness, it hinted at something bigger. Something more permanent. Ethan had never seen himself in uniform, had never imagined a life defined by duty and discipline. His father, a man of opinions and expectations, had always dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. "You're not built for that kind of life," he once said, not unkindly, but with a certainty that pierced deeper than he realized. Those words echoed now as Ethan trained, lingering like a shadow he couldn't outrun. One afternoon, as he finished a set of deadlifts, Jordan, the intimidating regular with the powerful frame, approached him. Ethan stiffened, half expecting criticism or unsolicited advice. "You've been putting in work," Jordan said simply, crossing his arms. "Most people fall off after week 2. You haven't." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Just trying to get better." Jordan's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "Better comes slow. But you're showing the right signs." He paused, studying Ethan's posture, his grip, his quiet determination. "You training for something specific?" The question struck like a jolt. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to speak the truth aloud. Saying it would make it real. "There's this Army recruitment challenge coming up," he said finally. "I just want to see if I can do it." Jordan nodded once, thoughtful. "Then you're on the right track. But challenges like that aren't just physical. They test your head more than your body." Ethan didn't fully understand what he meant, but the weight of the statement lodged somewhere deep. After Jordan walked away, Ethan lingered by the dumbbell rack, replaying the conversation. Strength of mind. Endurance of spirit. He wasn't sure he possessed either, yet something inside whispered that the only way to find out was to keep going. At home, tension brewed quietly. His mother noticed his early mornings, his sore limbs, the faint exhaustion under his eyes. One evening, as he filled a glass with water, she leaned against the counter with a softness that unsettled him. "Are you doing okay, Ethan?" He nodded, drinking slowly. "You've changed these past few weeks," she continued gently. "I'm not saying it's bad. Just different. You seem driven. More than usual." He set the glass down, unsure how much to reveal. "I'm training for something. A challenge." She waited. He knew she wanted more. "It's army-related," he said finally. "Just a test. Not enlisting." "Not yet." Her eyes softened with worry more than understanding. "Things like that are serious. Dangerous, even." "I know. But I need to try." They stood in silence, the weight of unspoken fears hanging between them. She touched his arm lightly. "Just don't push yourself to the point of breaking." He nodded again, though he already knew that pushing himself was the entire point. Over the next several days, his training intensified. He timed his runs, forcing himself to shave off seconds. He practiced burpees in the empty park at dawn, fog curling around him like ghostly spectators. He attempted more pull-ups, each rep a war against gravity and memory. His failures no longer discouraged him, they informed him, told him where the gaps were, guided him toward improvement. But the true turning point came one evening when he attempted the obstacle course at a nearby outdoor training park, a rough setup of monkey bars, balance beams, and rope climbs. He had never tried anything like it. His palms burned as he swung from bar to bar, slipping halfway across and landing hard in the dirt. He tried again. And again. His breath grew ragged, his arms shaking uncontrollably. On the fourth attempt, he made it 2 bars farther than before dropping with a grunt that echoed across the empty field. Frustration surged. He pressed his forearm to his forehead, fighting the sting behind his eyes. "What am I even doing?" The thought rose like a tide, threatening to wash away the progress he had built. He sat in the dirt, staring at the equipment, feeling foolish for imagining he could prepare himself in just a few weeks. But then a memory surfaced, one he hadn't touched in years. He was 12, standing outside his father's workshop after failing a school athletics test. His father had looked at him, not unkindly, but with a resigned disappointment that carved itself into his bones. "Some people just aren't made for certain things, Ethan." The memory brought a familiar ache, but this time the ache fueled something else, something fierce and defiant. He looked at the monkey bars again, chest rising with determination rather than defeat. He stood, chalked his hands with dust, grabbed the first bar, and went again. This time, when he fell, he didn't stay down. He rose immediately, muscles screaming, mind ablaze. By his 7th attempt, he made it halfway before dropping. By the 9th, he completed the entire set, sloppy, uneven, breathless, but complete. As he landed on the far side, a wave of triumph surged through him so powerful it made his knees buckle. Not because he conquered the obstacle, but because he refused to let it conquer him. Walking home afterward, sweat drying on his skin, Ethan realized something profound. Courage wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It lived in small, stubborn choices, choosing to rise, choosing to try, choosing to believe you might become someone stronger than your past allowed. And though he didn't know it yet, this shift, this moral turning point, was the spark that would soon ignite a transformation far greater than he ever imagined. The morning of the recruitment challenge arrived with a cold wind that swept through the training grounds like a warning. Ethan stood among a scattered crowd of participants, some seasoned athletes, some curious newcomers, a few wearing shirts emblazoned with military slogans. He wore none. His clothes were simple, practical, unremarkable. He blended easily into the background, yet his heartbeat thudded with a force that made the world feel sharpened, edges crisp with anticipation. For weeks, he had trained in shadows, in early mornings and late evenings, building a quiet resilience no one witnessed. Now, under a sky streaked with pale gold, he felt all of it trembling inside him. Drill instructors paced before the group, boots striking the ground with deliberate weight. Their presence carried an authority that commanded silence. Ethan felt the energy shift as one stepped forward, voice booming across the field. "This is not a competition against each other," the instructor barked. "This is a competition against yourselves. What you bring today is what you've built when no one was watching." The words hit Ethan like a direct strike, echoing his own private journey. For a brief moment, he wondered if the man had spoken directly to him. The first event was the long-distance run, 5 miles across uneven terrain. Ethan moved to the middle of the pack, nerves locking his jaw as participants stretched around him. When the whistle sounded, bodies surged forward in a wave of pounding footsteps and swirling dust. Ethan kept his pace steady, resisting the urge to chase the frontrunners. His lungs tightened early, the cold air slicing through his chest, but he remembered every morning he'd forced himself down quiet streets. Slow, steady, relentless. As the group spread out, Ethan fell into a rhythm. His breath became measured, his mind narrowing to the simple, repetitive act of moving forward. The trail wound through wooded areas where sunlight dappled the earth, then opened into wide fields where wind battered his face. Around the second mile, fatigue crept into his legs, but he pushed through it. By mile 3, doubt whispered cruelly, "You're not built for this," but he silenced it with each deliberate step. Near the final stretch, he saw several participants walking, hands on hips, shoulders heaving. He passed them slowly, almost apologetically, but their struggle reminded him of his own quiet promise. Finish, no matter how you finish. When he crossed the line, chest heaving, he bent forward with hands on his knees, letting the burn wash through him. He didn't know his time. It didn't matter. He had endured. The next challenge was upper body endurance, push-ups and sit-ups performed under strict supervision. Ethan formed a row with others as instructors paced behind them, counting sharply, correcting posture with curt commands. His arms quivered by the 20th push-up, but he pressed through the discomfort, imagining the countless nights he'd trained in silence. He reached 31 before collapsing onto the mat, sweat stinging his eyes. It wasn't the highest score around him, yet it was more than he had ever achieved. For a moment, as he lay on his back beneath the open sky, he felt something close to pride flicker through him. But the real test, the one that tightened his stomach with dread, was the obstacle course. A long stretch of towering structures and grueling stations stood before them. Rope climbs, wall jumps, log carries, crawling trenches. Ethan walked the length of it with the others, boots crunching over gravel. The air smelled of metal and earth. Instructors shouted warnings and instructions, but Ethan barely heard them. He stared at the rope climb, remembering the sting of failure weeks ago, the bruises, the frustration. The monkey bars gleamed in the sun, a reminder of the night he pushed himself until his palms burned. Every obstacle held a memory of the boy he used to be. When the whistle blew, chaos erupted. Participants sprinted toward the first station. Ethan forced himself not to compare, not to measure his worth against faster bodies. He reached the rope, hands gripping the coarse fibers. His arms trembled, but not with fear, with conviction. He remembered Jordan's words, "These things test your head more than your body." Ethan inhaled, planted his feet, and pulled. The ascent wasn't graceful. His movements were uneven, his breaths sharp with effort, but he rose steadily. Halfway up, his foot slipped, and panic flared through him. The rope burned against his palm as he tightened his grip. For a split second, he hung suspended between progress and failure. Then he dug deeper, not into strength, but into stubbornness, and lifted himself again. When he slapped the top beam and descended, his chest flooded with fierce triumph. The wall jump came next. Ethan sprinted toward the towering wooden barrier, planting a foot against its surface to propel himself upward. His first attempt failed. He slid down, landing awkwardly. Breath ragged, he tried again, this time catching the edge with his fingertips. His arms screamed, but he hauled himself over with a growl he didn't know lived inside him. Log carry. Crawling trench. Balance beams. Each station demanded something different: strength, speed, precision, resilience. Ethan faltered more than once. He scraped his shin, tore skin from his palm, swallowed dust that clung to his throat. But every time he stumbled, he rose again. That, more than anything, kept him moving. Near the end, he reached the monkey bars, the obstacle that once mocked him. His hands tingled with residual pain, but he pushed off the ground, grasping the first bar. One swing. Then another. His body swayed, breath shaking, core clenched tight. Halfway through, his grip faltered, but instead of falling, he paused, recalibrated, and continued. When he landed on the opposite platform, a quiet exhale escaped him, part disbelief, part victory. As he approached the final sprint, the world around him blurred into movement and noise, but something inside him stilled. He wasn't the strongest here. He wasn't the fastest. But he was still standing, still fighting, still moving toward a finish line he once believed belonged to other people. When he finally crossed it, collapsing onto the grass, the sky above him seemed impossibly wide. His body ached in every limb, yet he felt lighter than he had in years. Around him, participants sprawled across the field in exhaustion. Instructors moved among them, offering water, brief nods of acknowledgement. Jordan, who had participated silently in his own heat, approached with a slow, approving grin. "You didn't quit," he said. "That's what matters most." Ethan didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat was too tight, not with pain, but with something deeper, something like realization. He had come here to prove something to himself. And now, lying in the cool grass, breath shuddering, heart thrumming with exhaustion and pride, he understood the truth he had never dared to believe. He already had. The evening settled over the training grounds like a slow exhale, softening the sharp lines of the day into something almost gentle. The sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting long amber streaks across the field where participants gathered for closing remarks. Ethan stood among them, posture stiff but heart steady, his body still humming with the ache of exertion. Every muscle reminded him of the miles he had run, the walls he had climbed, the moments he nearly broke, but didn't. He felt different now, subtly but undeniably, like someone who had stepped through an unseen doorway and couldn't go back. An instructor addressed the group from a small platform, voice resonant against the fading sky. "Some of you excelled today. Some of you struggled. All of you showed up and fought your own battles. That's what defines potential. Not scores. Not speed. The willingness to step forward and try." Ethan listened, the words sinking deeper than he expected. They weren't about winning, they were about character, the kind forged in quiet rooms, lonely mornings, internal wars only the self could witness. After the brief ceremony, the crowd dispersed, trickling into clusters of conversation. Laughter broke out among some. Others limped toward waiting cars. Ethan remained at the edge of the field, staring out at the obstacle course now cast in twilight. Just hours ago, it had felt like a gauntlet designed to expose every flaw he carried. Now it seemed like a map of the journey he'd come through, each station a memory, each struggle a proof that the person he once believed himself to be was no longer the whole story. Jordan approached him with hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie. He stopped beside Ethan, nodding toward the course. "Did better than you thought, didn't you?" Ethan let out a weak laugh. "Honestly, I'm still trying to believe I finished." "You didn't just finish," Jordan said. "You kept going when you were spent. That's the part most people quit at. That's the part that matters." He paused, then added with uncharacteristic softness, "Not many people come in here with your level of grit." The compliment felt almost unreal. Ethan looked down, toeing the grass. "I don't think I've ever been described as gritty before." "That's because you hadn't been tested before," Jordan replied. "Tests show you what you're made of." Ethan glanced toward the rope climb, remembering the moment he slipped and recovered. "I always thought I knew what I was made of," he said quietly. "But today, I'm not so sure anymore." Jordan clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Good. That means you're growing." As the last few rays of sunlight faded, Ethan walked slowly across the grounds, letting silence settle around him. He passed the finish line one more time, tracing its chalky edge with the tip of his shoe. This wasn't the end. He felt that instinctively. It was something closer to a beginning, though he didn't know yet where it would lead. Perhaps toward enlistment. Perhaps toward something else entirely. But whatever path lay ahead, he knew he would walk it with a steadier heart than he had carried before. When he reached the parking lot, he saw his mother's car idling beneath a lamppost. She had insisted on picking him up, despite his attempts to tell her he could manage. As he approached, she stepped out, eyes scanning him with a mixture of worry and pride. The sight of her softened something inside him. "You look exhausted," she said, brushing dirt from his cheek with her thumb. "I am," he admitted with a small smile. "How did it go?" He hesitated, searching for words big enough to hold the day. None came. So he answered simply, "I finished. I didn't quit." Her eyes glistened, and she nodded slowly. "That's all I ever want from you, Ethan. To keep choosing yourself. To keep trying." They drove home through quiet streets illuminated by streetlights that flickered like distant beacons. Ethan leaned his head against the window, watching the shapes of houses blur past. His mind wandered to the weeks leading up to the challenge, the fear, the self-doubt, the private victories that no one else had seen. He remembered the poster that started it all, the crooked sheet of paper taped to a hallway wall. Strange how something so ordinary had cracked his world open. Later that night, after showering and tending to the scrapes on his palms, he stepped outside onto the back porch. The sky was a dark canvas scattered with stars, the air cool against his warm skin. He inhaled deeply, the scent of night blooming with quiet clarity. For the first time in a long while, he felt calm, not because life had become easier, but because he had become stronger. He sat on the wooden step and let his thoughts settle into place. What had today revealed? That he could endure more than he imagined. That fear was not a wall but a doorway. That strength wasn't about perfection or power, it was about choices made in solitude, far from applause or validation. Most of all, he understood a truth he had chased without knowing. Transformation wasn't something that happened all at once. It unfolded slowly, in whispers, in repetitions, in painful attempts that accumulated until one day you looked in the mirror and saw someone you hadn't known you were becoming. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying with it the faint echo of his father's old words, "Some people just aren't made for certain things." 4 years, that sentence had lived inside him like a ceiling he couldn't reach beyond. But now, as he sat beneath the open sky, he realized something startling. It had never been a ceiling at all. It was a challenge. One he had finally decided to rise to. He whispered into the quiet, "Maybe I am made for more." The words felt like an oath. In the weeks that followed, Ethan continued training, not for the challenge, not for anyone else, but because the discipline rooted him. His runs grew smoother, his lifts heavier. His mother noticed the difference in his posture, in the calm certainty behind his eyes. Even Jordan would occasionally nod at him in the gym, a silent acknowledgement of respect earned through effort rather than talk. One afternoon, Ethan revisited the crooked recruitment poster. It remained exactly where it had been, edges curled, colors fading. He stood before it, not as the uncertain boy from weeks ago, but as someone forged through trial. Instead of hesitation, he felt gratitude, for the poster, for the challenge, for the discomfort that pushed him forward. He didn't tear it down. Instead, he straightened it, smoothing the tape against the wall, honoring the symbol of the journey it began. As he stepped back, he realized something profound. The transformation no one saw coming wasn't the shift in his physical strength. It wasn't even the endurance he had built. It was the courage quietly blooming inside him, the courage to demand more of himself, to chase something bigger, to believe he could become someone unrecognizable from the boy who once feared being seen. And though his path forward remained unwritten, one certainty glowed within him like a rising sun. He was no longer a gym rookie. He was becoming the kind of man who ran toward challenge, not away from it. The kind of man who met hardship with grit. The kind of man who, with time and discipline, might one day earn the title he once believed was meant for others. A soldier. But for now, standing in the hallway with the poster glowing beneath the lights, Ethan Morales allowed himself one small, victorious smile, because every great transformation begins quietly, with a decision no one witnesses. And his had only just begun.